April 11th, 1945, Okinawa. The darkness swallowed everything beyond 30 meters. Lieutenant Colonel Hiromichi Yahara pressed himself against the limestone ridge, rain streaking down his face as he peered through German-issued field glasses at the American positions below. For months he had studied Wehrmacht night fighting manuals, absorbed every lesson from Europe about controlling the darkness. Night belonged to the prepared. Night belonged to those who understood its rhythms. But something was wrong. American soldiers moved through the black void with impossible precision. No fumbling, no hesitation. They advanced as if guided by invisible threads, their rifles finding targets that should have been phantoms in the ink-black night. The sound of their carbines cracked methodically, each shot deliberate, each muzzle flash revealing another fallen Japanese infiltrator who had believed himself invisible. Yahara lowered his glasses, confusion cutting through decades of military training. His best men, masters of night infiltration who had terrorized American positions across the Pacific, were being hunted like deer. The Americans weren't using flares. No searchlights swept the battlefield, yet they moved and fought as if the sun blazed overhead. In the pre-dawn hours, as reports filtered back from his scattered units, one phrase echoed through intercepted American radio chatter that would haunt every Axis officer who heard it. "We own the night now." The rules of warfare, unchanged for centuries, had just been rewritten by American ingenuity, and the enemy had no idea what hit them. 6 months earlier, in the muddy fields of Normandy, German commanders had noticed something peculiar about their American adversaries. Unlike the British, who launched aggressive night raids, or the Soviets, who specialized in dawn assaults, the Americans simply stopped fighting when the sun went down. Every evening brought an almost ritualistic pause in combat operations. Oberst Heinrich Müller, commanding the 352nd Infantry Division, documented this pattern in his daily reports to Berlin. "The Americans demonstrate superior firepower and coordination during daylight hours," he wrote, "but they consistently withdraw to defensive positions at nightfall. This predictable behavior grants us significant tactical advantages." German units used these precious hours of darkness to reposition troops, move supplies, evacuate wounded, and prepare defensive positions. The night became Germany's sanctuary. This wasn't mere observation. It was strategic exploitation. Wehrmacht doctrine had evolved to depend on American reluctance to fight after dark. Supply convoys moved under cover of darkness. Artillery pieces were repositioned. Fresh troops rotated into forward positions. The Germans treated nighttime like a ceasefire that only they understood. American field commanders were well aware of this limitation, and it frustrated them immensely. Colonel James Warren of the 83rd Infantry Division wrote to his wife in September 1944, "We give Jerry 12 hours every day to lick his wounds and prepare for tomorrow's fight. It's like boxing with one hand tied behind our back." The cost in American lives was measurable. Each dawn brought renewed German resistance from positions that could have been overrun the night before. The root of this tactical paralysis lay in American military doctrine itself. Field Manual 720, the Bible of infantry tactics, treated night operations as exceptional circumstances requiring extensive preparation, specialized training, and favorable conditions. Night attacks demanded detailed reconnaissance, careful coordination, and rehearsals that took days to organize. In the rapid advance across France, there simply wasn't time for such elaborate preparations. Training reinforced this cautious approach. American soldiers learned that darkness multiplied every risk. Friendly fire incidents increased dramatically. Navigation became treacherous. Communication broke down. Command and control suffered. The manual explicitly warned that night operations should only be undertaken when absolutely necessary and when sufficient preparation time is available. German intelligence services documented American night fighting limitations extensively. Captured documents from the 1st Infantry Division revealed that battalion commanders received explicit orders to consolidate positions and establish defensive perimeters before sunset. Forward observers reported that American artillery fire became noticeably less accurate after dark. Tank units routinely lagged for the night, effectively removing armor support from infantry operations. This predictable pattern allowed German forces to conduct what they called tactical regroupings with minimal interference. Entire divisions could relocate under cover of darkness. The 21st Panzer Division famously moved 40 kilometers in a single night, completely surprising American forces the following morning. Fresh ammunition arrived, wounded were evacuated, reinforcements took position, all while American forces remained stationary in their foxholes. The psychological impact was equally significant. German soldiers developed confidence in their night-fighting superiority. They launched infiltration attacks, knowing American sentries struggled to distinguish friend from foe in darkness. Small teams of sappers regularly penetrated American lines, planting mines, gathering intelligence, and spreading fear. These night raids had strategic implications far beyond their tactical success. They disrupted American sleep, created paranoia, and forced defensive measures that diverted resources from offensive operations. While European battlefields exposed American night-fighting weaknesses, scientists at Bell Laboratories in New Jersey were secretly developing technology that would revolutionize warfare forever. The Infrared Research Project, launched in 1940, represented America's first serious attempt to give soldiers superhuman vision. Leading this effort was Dr. Vladimir Zworykin, the Russian-born inventor whose electronic innovations would soon make darkness obsolete. The project's origins traced back to pre-war German experiments with infrared technology. American intelligence had obtained fragmentary reports about Wehrmacht research into night vision devices, spurring fears that German forces might soon possess significant advantages in darkness. The United States military establishment, still reeling from Pearl Harbor, couldn't afford to fall behind in any technological race. Congress authorized unlimited funding for what became known as the Manhattan Project of Night Vision. Zworykin's team faced extraordinary technical challenges. Creating a portable device that could amplify invisible infrared light required miniaturizing complex electronic components that had previously filled entire rooms. The image intensifier tube, heart of the system, demanded precision manufacturing tolerances measured in thousandths of inches. Early prototypes weighed over 60 pounds and required truck-mounted generators. Soldiers couldn't carry them, much less fight with them. The breakthrough came in late 1943 when Bell Labs developed the first truly portable infrared scope. Designated the M1 Sniper Scope, it consisted of an infrared spotlight, an image intensifier, and a specialized sight mounted on an M1 carbine. The complete system weighed 35 pounds, still heavy, but manageable for a trained soldier. More importantly, it provided clear vision up to 125 yards in total darkness. Testing revealed both promise and problems. The M1 system worked brilliantly under ideal conditions, allowing operators to identify and engage targets invisible to the naked eye. However, the infrared spotlight created a significant tactical vulnerability. Enemy forces equipped with infrared viewers could easily detect the light source, making American positions visible from great distances. The technology provided advantage only when the enemy lacked similar equipment. By early 1944, engineers had developed an improved M2 version with better range and reliability. The infrared spotlight became more focused, reducing detection risks while extending effective range to 300 yards. Image quality improved dramatically, allowing operators to distinguish between individual soldiers and identify specific equipment. Field testing in Louisiana swamps proved the system's effectiveness against simulated Japanese night infiltration tactics. Production presented its own challenges. Complex electronics required rare materials and specialized manufacturing techniques. Each scope contained over 200 precision components, many hand-assembled by skilled technicians. Quality control was critical. A single defective component could render the entire system useless. By late 1944, American factories were producing fewer than 50 scopes per month, far below military demands. The Pacific Theater provided the ideal testing ground for infrared technology. Japanese forces routinely conducted night infiltration attacks, exactly the scenario for which these scopes were designed. Intelligence reports from Guadalcanal, Saipan, and Leyte detailed Japanese tactics that relied heavily on darkness. Small teams of soldiers would creep through American perimeters, plant explosives, gather intelligence, and disappear before dawn. These attacks caused disproportionate casualties and psychological damage. Military planners recognized that infrared scopes could neutralize Japanese night fighting advantages completely. Unlike conventional illumination methods, flares, searchlights, or star shells, infrared technology provided covert observation capabilities. American soldiers could watch enemy movements without revealing their own positions. The psychological impact would be devastating. Japanese forces would lose their sanctuary of darkness while remaining unaware of American capabilities. Training teams deployed to Pacific staging areas in late 1944, carrying the first production infrared scopes. The technology remained highly classified, with operators sworn to secrecy about its capabilities. Even unit commanders received only limited information about the equipment's technical specifications. The goal was maintaining complete tactical surprise when the scopes finally reached combat theaters. From a human perspective, the war's darkness created a terror that transcended tactical concerns. Private First Class Robert Chen of the 96th Infantry Division described the psychological weight of night duty in his letters home. You hear every sound amplified 100 times. A snapping twig becomes a Japanese soldier. Wind through the grass sounds like whispered orders. Your mind plays tricks until you're shooting at shadows. This fear wasn't cowardice. It was the natural human response to fighting an invisible enemy. American soldiers developed coping mechanisms that often proved counterproductive. Some units fired randomly into the darkness at imagined threats, revealing their positions while accomplishing nothing. Others remained frozen in terror, unable to respond effectively to real attacks. Sleep became impossible near the front lines. Exhaustion compounded fear, creating a vicious cycle that degraded combat effectiveness. Medical corpsmen reported increasing cases of combat fatigue directly related to night duty stress. The technological angle revealed America's industrial advantage in its full glory. While German and Japanese engineers struggled with material shortages and bombing raids, American factories operated at peak efficiency. Bell Laboratories alone employed over 30,000 engineers and technicians working on military projects. The infrared program represented just one facet of a massive technological mobilization that included radar, sonar, proximity fuses, and electronic countermeasures. American manufacturing capabilities dwarfed Axis production in every category. The United States produced more electronic components in 1944 than Germany and Japan combined had manufactured throughout the entire war. This industrial superiority extended beyond quantity to quality. American precision manufacturing techniques created components with tolerance, seas unmatched anywhere in the world. The infrared scopes required exactly this level of technological sophistication. Tactically, German mastery of night operations had evolved through bitter experience on the Eastern Front. Wehrmacht doctrine emphasized mobility, surprise, and psychological impact during darkness. German units practiced night movement until it became second nature. Soldiers learned to navigate by sound, smell, and touch. Officers developed elaborate hand signals for silent communication. This expertise transferred directly to Western Front operations, where German forces consistently outmaneuvered Allied troops after dark. German night fighting techniques relied heavily on detailed reconnaissance and patient preparation. Assault teams would spend days studying target areas, identifying approach routes, and escape paths. They moved in small groups to minimize detection risks. Weapons were selected for stealth rather than firepower. Knives, garrots, and silenced firearms predominated. The goal wasn't decisive victory, but psychological warfare, disrupting enemy sleep and creating paranoia. Japanese tactics in the Pacific reflected different priorities but achieved similar results. Night infiltration served multiple purposes, gathering intelligence, planting mines, and demonstrating Japanese presence behind American lines. These attacks rarely caused massive casualties, but their psychological impact was devastating. American soldiers never felt safe, even in supposedly secure rear areas. The leadership angle exposed fundamental differences in military philosophy between American and Axis forces. German officers embraced night operations as force multipliers that allowed smaller units to achieve disproportionate impact. Their training emphasized adaptation and improvisation in darkness. Japanese commanders viewed night attacks as expressions of warrio, or spirit, opportunities to demonstrate superior discipline and dedication. American military leadership, by contrast, prioritized systematic approaches and technological solutions. Rather than training soldiers to fight effectively in darkness, American commanders sought ways to eliminate darkness entirely. This preference for technological rather than tactical solutions reflected broader American attitudes toward warfare. Problems should be solved through industrial innovation rather than individual adaptation. The enemy angle revealed how Axis forces had systematically exploited American night fighting limitations. German intelligence reports from 1944 contained detailed analyses of American tactical patterns. Wehrmacht planners knew exactly when American units would establish defensive perimeters, when artillery fire would cease, and when supply convoys would halt for the night. This predictability allowed German commanders to plan operations with unusual precision. Japanese forces in the Pacific had developed even more sophisticated night fighting capabilities. Years of jungle warfare had taught them to move silently through the darkest terrain. They could navigate without compasses, communicate without sound, and strike without warning. Their night infiltration techniques were so effective that American units often discovered Japanese positions only after sustaining casualties from close-range attacks. The moral angle presented complex questions about warfare's changing nature. Traditional military ethics assumed that combatants fought on equal terms, with similar weapons and capabilities. Infrared technology created unprecedented asymmetries. American soldiers could see enemies who remained completely blind to American presence. Critics argued this violated fundamental principles of fair combat, while supporters countered that war itself was inherently unfair. Religious leaders on both sides struggled with the implications. Some American chaplains praised technology that protected their soldiers from harm. Others worried about the spiritual consequences of fighting from positions of invisible superiority. Japanese commanders, steeped in Bushido traditions that emphasized honor and courage, found infrared capabilities particularly disturbing because they removed opportunities for heroic face-to-face combat. The strategic angle encompassed far more than immediate tactical advantages. American industrial capacity could produce sophisticated night vision equipment in quantities that Axis forces couldn't match. German attempts to develop competing technology foundered on material shortages and Allied bombing campaigns. Japanese industry lacked the precision manufacturing capabilities required for complex electronic systems. This technological gap reflected broader strategic realities. The United States possessed not only the industrial infrastructure to develop advanced weapons, but also the scientific establishment to conceive them. American universities produce thousands of engineers and physicists annually. Corporate research laboratories like Bell Labs, General Electric, and Westinghouse employed more scientists than entire Axis nations. The Manhattan Project demonstrated America's ability to solve seemingly impossible technical challenges through massive resource allocation. Economic considerations reinforced American advantages. The United States could afford to spend millions developing weapons that might provide only marginal improvements in combat effectiveness. German and Japanese planners, facing severe resource constraints, had to prioritize immediate battlefield needs over experimental technologies. This short-term focus prevented Axis forces from developing countermeasures to American innovations. The psychological strategy behind infrared deployment was equally sophisticated. American planners understood that technological surprises could shatter enemy morale more effectively than conventional firepower. Japanese soldiers who discovered that darkness no longer protected them would lose confidence in their primary tactical advantage. German commanders who realized Americans could fight effectively at night would be forced to completely revise their operation. All planning. Intelligence gathering represented another strategic dimension. Infrared scopes allowed American forces to observe enemy movements without detection, providing invaluable information about troop dispositions, supply routes, and defensive preparations. This intelligence advantage compounded over time, enabling American commanders to make increasingly informed tactical decisions, while their enemies operated with incomplete information about American capabilities. The morning of April 1, 1945, brought deceptive calm to the beaches of Okinawa. American forces had expected fierce resistance during the initial landing, but Japanese defenders had withdrawn to prepared positions inland. This tactical retreat was deliberate, Lieutenant General Mitsuru Ushijima had studied American amphibious operations extensively and concluded that beach defenses were futile against overwhelming naval and air support. Instead, he would bleed the Americans in carefully prepared killing fields where their technological advantages meant less. Captain Omar Patterson of the Corps of Engineers had arrived with a secret that would change everything. His small team carried 150 experimental M3 carbines equipped with the latest infrared scopes. These weapons represented the culmination of 4 years of intensive development, incorporating lessons learned from earlier prototypes. The M3 system was lighter, more reliable, and significantly more effective than previous versions. Patterson's mission extended beyond simple weapons deployment. He was tasked with training American soldiers in the use of infrared technology while simultaneously evaluating its combat effectiveness. Each scope was worth more than a new automobile, making security paramount. The technology remained so classified that most battalion commanders didn't know what equipment they were receiving until training began. The training process revealed both promise and complications. Soldiers initially struggled with the scope's weight and bulk. The complete system, rifle, scope, battery pack, and infrared illuminator, weighed over 35 pounds. Operators had to learn entirely new movement techniques to avoid revealing their positions through infrared signatures. Most challenging was the mental adjustment required to fight with superhuman vision while surrounded by soldiers who remained effectively blind. Combat effectiveness testing began almost immediately. Japanese forces maintained their traditional pattern of night infiltration attacks, providing perfect targets for infrared-equipped American soldiers. The first engagement occurred on April 3rd, when a sniper scope operator detected a 4-man Japanese patrol attempting to penetrate American perimeters. The patrol was eliminated with precise rifle fire before they realized they had been discovered. Word of these successes spread quickly through American units, creating enormous demand for the limited number of infrared scopes available. Battalion commanders submitted requests for hundreds of devices, far exceeding production capabilities. Priority allocation became a contentious issue, with combat units arguing they needed the technology more than support elements. The psychological impact on American forces was immediate and dramatic. Soldiers equipped with infrared scopes reported feeling invincible during night operations. Fear of Japanese infiltration attacks diminished significantly. Sleep quality improved as soldiers gained confidence in their ability to detect approaching enemies. Morale soared among units that received the new technology. Japanese forces initially attributed American night fighting improvements to enhanced training or new tactics. Intelligence officers couldn't explain how American sentries had become so effective at detecting infiltration attempts. Captured American equipment from earlier battles contained no hints about infrared capabilities. The technology remained completely unknown to Japanese military leadership. The first major test came during the night of April 11th. Japanese forces launched a coordinated infiltration attack using proven tactics that had succeeded throughout the Pacific Campaign. Small teams of highly trained soldiers moved silently through American perimeters, seeking to plant explosives and gather intelligence. This attack should have succeeded based on previous experience. Instead, it became a massacre. American soldiers equipped with infrared scopes tracked Japanese movements from the moment they left their positions. Machine gunners directed by snooper scope operators delivered devastating, accurate fire. 41 Japanese soldiers died in the attack, while American casualties totaled 0. This result was unprecedented in Pacific Theater night combat. Captain Patterson documented every detail of the engagement for his report to Washington. The infrared scopes had performed flawlessly despite challenging conditions, rain, darkness, and the stress of combat. Operators maintained clear vision at ranges exceeding 200 yards. Battery life proved adequate for extended operations. Most importantly, Japanese forces showed no awareness of American technological capabilities. The tactical implications became clear immediately. American units could establish defensive perimeters with significantly reduced manpower while maintaining superior security. Night patrols became feasible for the first time, allowing American forces to gather intelligence and disrupt Japanese operations. The balance of night combat had shifted decisively in America's favor. The Japanese response to their failed infiltration attack revealed both desperation and tactical sophistication. General Ushijima ordered a massive counteroffensive for the night of April 12th, concentrating his remaining reserves for what he believed would be a decisive blow against overextended American positions. This attack would involve over 5,000 soldiers supported by artillery barrages and coordinated infiltration teams. American intelligence intercepted fragmentary reports about the planned attack but couldn't determine its exact timing or scope. Infrared-equipped units received orders to maintain maximum vigilance while providing early warning of Japanese movements. The technology that had proven effective against small infiltration teams would now face its ultimate test against a coordinated mass assault. The attack began at 0200 hours with intensive artillery bombardment of American forward positions. Japanese gunners had carefully plotted their fires to disrupt American communications and create gaps in defensive lines. Following the barrage, waves of infantry emerged from hidden positions in caves and fortified bunkers. Their objective was to overrun American positions before dawn could bring devastating air and naval support. Infrared scopes immediately detected the Japanese advance, providing American commanders with unprecedented situational awareness. Battery-powered radios carried reports from snooper scope operators throughout the American perimeter. 50-plus enemy soldiers, advancing from grid 234-567, large formation moving through the draw to our east. Enemy troops massing behind the ridgeline. This real-time intelligence allowed American artillery to engage targets with pinpoint accuracy. The psychological effect on Japanese soldiers was devastating. They advanced expecting to use darkness as concealment, only to discover that American defensive fire was incredibly precise. Mortar rounds landed among advancing formations with uncanny accuracy. Machine gun fire swept areas where Japanese soldiers believed themselves invisible. The darkness that should have protected them had become a trap. Lieutenant Colonel Yahara, observing from his command post, watched his carefully planned attack disintegrate. Years of tactical experience had taught him to read the rhythm of night combat, but this engagement followed no familiar pattern. American fire was too accurate, too immediate, too precisely directed. His soldiers were dying faster than they could advance, and he couldn't understand why. Radio intercepts from American units provided the first clues about their technological advantage. Japanese intelligence officers monitoring American communications heard references to scope operators and infrared illumination. These terms meant nothing to officers trained in conventional warfare, but they suggested some form of advanced equipment that enabled American forces to fight effectively in darkness. The second wave of Japanese attacks began at 0330 hours, incorporating lessons learned from the first assault's failure. Soldiers advanced in smaller groups using more covered routes. Smoke screens obscured potential observation points. Artillery fire targeted suspected American equipment positions. These tactical adaptations reduced Japanese casualties, but couldn't overcome American technological superiority. Captain Patterson moved between positions throughout the night, documenting infrared scope performance under combat conditions. The equipment functioned flawlessly despite exposure to artillery fragments, rain, and the physical stress of continuous operation. Battery life exceeded specifications. Image quality remained clear at extended ranges. Most importantly, the scopes provided American soldiers with confidence to fight aggressively rather than simply defending passively. The final Japanese attack began just before dawn, representing General Ushijima's last reserve units. These soldiers were elite troops, specially trained for night infiltration and assault operations. Their mission was to reach American command positions and create enough chaos to allow follow-up attacks to succeed. This desperate gamble represented Japan's last chance to regain tactical initiative on Okinawa. American forces were ready. 3 nights of combat had perfected coordination between infrared scope operators and supporting weapons. Machine gun teams knew exactly how to respond to snooper scope target designations. Mortar crews had practiced engaging coordinates provided by infrared-equipped forward observers. Artillery batteries had developed techniques for rapid-fire missions based on real-time intelligence from night vision-equipped spotters. The slaughter was methodical and complete. Elite Japanese soldiers, masters of night warfare throughout the Pacific Campaign, died in waves as they advanced against positions they couldn't see. American casualties remained minimal, while Japanese losses mounted into the hundreds. By sunrise on April 13th, General Ushijima's offensive capability was effectively destroyed. Captain Patterson's combat report, filed the following morning, documented the complete transformation of night warfare. American forces had achieved tactical superiority in conditions that had previously favored the enemy. The infrared scopes had performed beyond all expectations, providing capabilities that fundamentally altered the balance of combat power. The age of technological warfare had begun. The morning light of April 13th revealed the full extent of Japanese losses from the previous night's assault. American burial details counted over 400 enemy dead scattered across the approaches to their positions. Many bodies showed wounds from remarkably precise rifle fire, single shots to the head or chest from weapons that shouldn't have been accurate in total darkness. Japanese survivors who witnessed the massacre struggled to comprehend what they had experienced. Captain Patterson's preliminary report to Washington contained statistics that would reshape American military thinking. The 7th and 96th Infantry Divisions, equipped with infrared scopes, reported 150 confirmed enemy casualties directly attributable to night vision technology during the first 2 weeks of operations. This represented nearly 30% of all Japanese soldiers killed by small arms fire during the same period. No previous weapon system had demonstrated such immediate and dramatic impact. More significant than raw casualty figures was the psychological transformation among American forces. Soldiers who had spent months dreading nightfall now volunteered for night patrol duties. Sleep patterns improved as fear of Japanese infiltration attacks diminished. Unit cohesion strengthened as confidence replaced anxiety. The technology had eliminated one of war's most persistent sources of stress and terror. Japanese prisoners provided the first enemy perspective on American night fighting capabilities. Under interrogation, captured soldiers described facing ghost soldiers who could see in absolute darkness. Some reported that American positions seemed to anticipate Japanese movements, delivering accurate fire before attacks even began. These accounts were initially dismissed as combat stress reactions until patterns emerged across multiple interrogation reports. Intelligence officers began piecing together the scope of American technological advantage. Captured equipment manifests from American supply depots mentioned infrared devices and night vision scopes, but provided no technical details. Photographs of American positions showed soldiers carrying unfamiliar equipment that didn't match any known weapons. The conclusion was unavoidable. American forces possessed some form of advanced night vision technology. The strategic implications extended far beyond immediate tactical advantages. Japanese defensive planning had relied heavily on night infiltration capabilities to disrupt American operations and gather intelligence. With this capability neutralized, Japanese forces lost one of their few remaining advantages over technologically superior American units. The psychological warfare value of night attacks disappeared entirely. German military observers, monitoring Pacific operations through diplomatic channels, recognized the broader significance of American night vision technology. Wehrmacht intelligence reports from late 1945 contained urgent recommendations for developing countermeasures to infrared systems. These reports acknowledged that traditional German advantages in night operations would become meaningless if American technology reached European battlefields. Production data from American factories revealed the scope of technological mobilization behind infrared weapons. Bell Laboratories had delivered over 2,000 infrared scopes by war's end, with production capacity expanding rapidly. Plans existed for equipping entire divisions with night vision equipment by 1946. The industrial infrastructure that created these weapons could be scaled up to supply hundreds of thousands of units for the planned invasion of Japan. Medical reports documented the physical and psychological benefits of infrared technology for American soldiers. Combat fatigue cases directly related to night duty stress decreased by over 60% in units equipped with night vision scopes. Sleep quality improved measurably. Accidental friendly fire incidents during darkness dropped to near zero. The technology had eliminated many traditional causes of combat stress and battlefield confusion. The financial cost of infrared development totaled over $50 million by 1945, equivalent to hundreds of millions in current dollars. This investment represented just one component of America's massive technological research program. Similar sums were being spent on radar, sonar, proximity fuses, and electronic countermeasures. The cumulative effect was overwhelming technological superiority across multiple domains of warfare. International implications became apparent as news of American night vision capabilities spread through diplomatic channels. Soviet observers demanded detailed technical specifications under Lend-Lease agreements. British intelligence services requested immediate access to infrared technology for their own forces. Neutral nations inquired about post-war availability of night vision equipment. The technology had shifted global balance of military power. The Korean War, erupting just 5 years after World War II's end, provided the first large-scale test of improved American night vision technology. The M3 infrared scope, refined based on Okinawa combat experience, equipped thousands of American soldiers facing Chinese and North Korean forces who relied heavily on night operations. The results validated every prediction about technological warfare's future direction. Chinese People's Volunteer Army tactics emphasized massive night attacks using human wave formations that had proven effective against nationali Saint forces during the Chinese Civil War. These attacks relied on darkness to mask troop movements and minimize casualties from superior American firepower. Chinese commanders assumed that American forces, like their previous opponents, would be vulnerable to coordinated night assaults. Instead, Chinese forces encountered Americans who could see clearly in absolute darkness. Infrared-equipped machine gun teams delivered devastating fire against advancing formations. Mortar crews engaged targets with precision that seemed impossible in darkness. Artillery strikes landed among Chinese positions with uncanny accuracy. The technological gap that had emerged during World War II had widened into an unbridgeable chasm. Lieutenant Colonel William Edwards, commanding a battalion equipped with the latest night vision technology, described the tactical revolution in his after-action report. Chinese forces attack in formations that would be suicidal in daylight. They rely completely on darkness for concealment. Our infrared scopes eliminate that advantage entirely. We can engage targets at ranges where they can't even see our muzzle flashes. The psychological impact on Chinese forces paralleled Japanese experiences from Okinawa. Survivors described fighting demons who could see through darkness itself. Unit cohesion collapsed as soldiers realized their traditional tactical advantages had disappeared. Commanders struggled to maintain offensive momentum when night attacks, previously their most effective tactic, resulted in catastrophic casualties with minimal American losses. Soviet military observers, studying Korean War battles extensively, recognized the broader implications of American night vision dominance. Red Army doctrine emphasized night operations as force multipliers for numerically inferior forces. If American allies possessed technology that eliminated darkness as concealment, Soviet tactical planning would require complete revision. This realization accelerated Soviet efforts to develop competing night vision capabilities. European NATO allies demanded immediate access to American infrared technology, recognizing its importance for potential confrontations with Soviet forces. The United States selectively shared older M1 and M2 systems while maintaining security around the latest M3 developments. This technology transfer created the foundation for NATO's collective night fighting capabilities during the Cold War era. Industrial production of infrared scopes expanded dramatically during the Korean conflict. American factories delivered over 15,000 night vision devices to military forces worldwide. Production techniques improved efficiency while reducing costs. What had been experimental technology during World War II became standard equipment for American infantry units by 1953. The Vietnam War demonstrated night vision technology's continued evolution and strategic importance. Viet Cong forces, like their predecessors in earlier conflicts, relied heavily on darkness for concealment during attacks against American positions. Improved American night vision equipment, now including passive systems that didn't require infrared illumination, provided overwhelming advantages in jungle warfare conditions. By the 1960s, American night vision technology had evolved far beyond the primitive infrared scopes used on Okinawa. Passive image intensifiers amplified available light rather than projecting infrared beams. These systems were lighter, more reliable, and impossible for enemies to detect. The technological advantage that began during World War II had become permanent American military superiority in night operations. Contemporary military analysts recognized that infrared technology represented more than tactical innovation. It exemplified America's approach to warfare through industrial and scientific supremacy. Rather than accepting battlefield limitations, American forces developed technological solutions that eliminated constraints entirely. This philosophy would shape military development throughout the Cold War and beyond. The long-term strategic implications became clear as decades passed. Nations that couldn't match American technological capabilities found themselves at permanent disadvantages in military conflicts. Night vision technology, initially developed to solve specific tactical problems during World War II, had evolved into a fundamental component of American military dominance worldwide. The transformation of night warfare between 1944 and 1945 represented more than tactical innovation. It marked the beginning of technology's complete dominance over traditional military skills. American infrared scopes didn't simply provide advantages in darkness, they eliminated darkness as a factor in warfare entirely. This achievement reflected fundamental characteristics of American industrial civilization: the belief that technical problems required technical solutions, and the resources to implement those solutions on a massive scale. The German officers who observed American night fighting capabilities understood instinctively that warfare's rules had changed permanently. Throughout military history, darkness had been the great equalizer, allowing smaller forces to surprise larger ones and providing sanctuary for the defeated. American technology removed this ancient refuge, creating asymmetries that traditional military training couldn't overcome. The broader implications extended far beyond World War II battlefields. America's willingness to invest enormous resources in technological solutions demonstrated a strategic approach that would define the post-war era. Rather than accepting tactical limitations, American military planners sought to eliminate constraints through scientific innovation. This philosophy would produce radar, nuclear weapons, precision-guided munitions, and eventually the digital warfare systems that dominate contemporary conflicts. The soldiers who first used infrared scopes on Okinawa witnessed the birth of modern warfare. Their ability to see and fight in absolute darkness foreshadowed an era when American forces would possess technological advantages so overwhelming that traditional military skills became irrelevant. The night vision technology that gave American infantry superhuman capabilities in 1945 was merely the beginning of a technological revolution that continues today. In the end, the German officers were correct. The rules had changed. Warfare would never again be a contest between equals, limited by natural constraints and human capabilities. American infrared technology opened a new chapter in military history, one where industrial capacity and scientific innovation determined victory more decisively than courage, training, or tactical skill. The darkness that had protected warriors for millennia became just another obstacle for American engineers to eliminate.